The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and fresh linen, but no scent could calm the storm in my heart. I had dreamed of this moment for months, holding my grandson for the first time. Seeing my son's proud smile, hearing the baby's tiny cries. I stepped forward with a bouquet of flowers, my hands trembling, my heart swelling with love and anticipation. But the moment I reached the door to the maternity ward, my world came crashing down. My son stood there, his expression cold, almost unrecognizable. "Mom, you can't come in," he said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. I froze, my breath caught. What do you mean? I'm his grandmother," I stammered, holding the flowers closer as if they could shield me from the pain. He shook his head. "She only wants family. You're not welcome right now." The words struck me like a physical blow, not the pain of distance, but the betrayal of someone I had trusted all my life. I remembered the nights I stayed awake worrying about him, the meals I skipped so he could eat, the sleepless mornings helping him get ready for school or for work. And now, at the most sacred moment of our lives, he shut the door on me. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here, not in front of everyone." I backed away, heart pounding, trying to make sense of his sudden cruelty. I felt as if the floor beneath me had disappeared, leaving me suspended in disbelief. How could the boy I had raised with so much care and sacrifice turn away from me in this way? I wandered the hallway, clutching the flowers like a lifeline, memories flashing in my mind. The ultrasound days, the little kicks she would describe to me over the phone, the baby shower filled with laughter and hope. I had imagined being part of it all. And now I was an outsider, excluded, forgotten. The nurses gave me sympathetic glances, but no one dared to intervene. I understood they had rules, and this wasn't their battle. My son had drawn a line, and no one would cross it. My chest tightened as a wave of anger mixed with sorrow. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shake him until he remembered who I was, but all I could do was stand there, heart aching, and watch as the moment I had dreamed of slipped away. And yet, even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a small spark of determination flickered inside. Something felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. His tone, his hesitation, the way he avoided my eyes. It wasn't just anger or sudden resentment. There was something deeper, something hidden, something I was not yet allowed to see. I clenched my fists, taking a shaky breath. I wouldn't leave quietly. I needed answers, and though I had no idea what lay ahead, a part of me knew this was only the beginning of a story far more complicated and far more painful than I could have ever imagined. Asterisk. As I sat alone in the quiet hospital lobby, memories of the past washed over me like an unstoppable tide. I remembered the day my son was born, the tiny fingers that clutched mine, the soft cries that seemed to echo in my very soul. From that moment, my life became a life of giving. I gave my time, my energy, my heart, and often, my own dreams, to ensure he had everything he could ever need. There were the countless nights I stayed awake, rocking him back to sleep, checking on him when he was sick, whispering promises of a brighter future into the darkness. I remembered the mornings I skipped breakfast so he could have a hot meal, the hours I spent tutoring him when school became too hard, the sacrifices I made quietly, without complaint. Every ache, every tear, every sleepless night was worth it because I believed love alone could shape his world. And yet, here I was, standing on the edge of heartbreak, barred from witnessing one of life's most sacred moments, the birth of his child. The son I had raised, nurtured, and believed in had turned away. The thought burned like fire in my chest. How could years of devotion, years of unwavering love, be erased in a single moment? I thought of the times I had defended him when the world criticized, when he made mistakes, when others doubted his path. I had never wavered, never questioned my love for him. And yet, that loyalty seemed meaningless now. My sacrifices, the foundation upon which he had built his life, had been met with rejection and silence, even in my grief. I remembered the small joys of our life together, the family dinners, the birthday surprises, the quiet conversations late at night. I had loved not just him, but the family we were supposed to build together. And somewhere in those memories, the ache of betrayal grew sharper. It wasn't just the denial of access to my grandson, it was the invisible line my son had drawn between us, a line I had never thought he would cross. But as sorrow threatened to swallow me whole, a glimmer of understanding flickered. Perhaps there were things I didn't know, secrets, misunderstandings, pressures that had driven him to this decision. My instinct to protect and love was still strong, but so was the growing realization that I could no longer blindly trust that all was as it seemed. I clenched the flowers I had brought, my fingers digging into the petals. They had been meant as a symbol of love and celebration. But now they felt like a reminder of the door that had been closed on me. My heart ached not only for myself, but for the bond I had hoped to nurture with my grandson. And yet, even in this storm of grief and betrayal, a quiet determination began to grow. I would not let this moment define me. I would uncover the truth piece by piece and reclaim my place in the life I had helped build. The journey ahead would be painful, yes, but I refused to disappear quietly into the shadows of rejection. Before the hospital doors closed on me that day, there had been a time filled with hope, laughter, and love. I remembered the months leading up to my grandson's birth. The quiet moments when my son would call to tell me how excited he was, and the daughter-in-law would giggle as I fussed over every detail. I had imagined myself helping decorate the nursery, reading bedtime stories, and holding the baby close as he drifted off to sleep. These were the dreams that had kept me going through years of sacrifice. And they felt suddenly fragile, as if someone had crushed them without a thought. I remembered the first ultrasound, the tiny heartbeat that raced across the screen, and how I had cried tears of joy. I thought of the baby shower, filled with laughter, games, and hopeful planning for a future I had imagined being part of. I had bought the tiniest clothes, the softest blankets, little toys that I thought would bring him comfort. Every stitch, every detail, every gift came from a heart bursting with love. Yet, even in those moments of happiness, there were subtle signs I had chosen to ignore. The occasional dismissive tone, the hurried explanations, the nervous glances between my son and his wife when I asked innocent questions, things I had brushed off. Believing that love would overcome any tension, I had trusted that our bond was unbreakable, that family meant unconditional love, and that nothing could come between us. Now, all of that seemed like a fragile illusion. The memories of hope clashed sharply with the present reality. I was locked out, barred from meeting the newest member of my family. The betrayal cut deeper because it wasn't sudden. It had been creeping in, quietly, slowly, like a shadow darkening a bright room. I thought about the calls I had made, the messages I had sent, always eager to hear updates, always ready to offer advice or help. I had imagined these would be met with warmth, with gratitude, with joy. Instead, they had been met with silence, avoidance, and now rejection. My heart ached not only for myself, but for the bond I had longed to build with my grandson, a bond that had been taken from me before it had even begun. Even as I mourned the loss, I tried to hold on to the pieces of hope I still had. I reminded myself that I had been patient, kind, and loving for decades. I had given everything I could, and while the world may have turned its back for a moment, my love remained steadfast. Somewhere, deep down, I believed that truth and love could not be denied forever, and yet, I could not ignore the nagging feeling that something else was at play. There had to be a reason, a motive, a secret that had driven my son to act this way. My mind raced with possibilities, each more troubling than the last. Why would he close the door on me? What was he hiding? What had changed between us that I hadn't seen? I clenched my fists around the tiny blanket I had brought for the baby, my resolve hardening. I would not give up. I would not disappear quietly. I would uncover the truth and fight for the bond I had dreamed of building, no matter how difficult the path ahead might be. As I left the hospital that day, heart heavy yet determined, I knew that the love I carried in my heart would guide me through the storm to come, and somewhere, in the shadows of betrayal, the secrets that had kept us apart were waiting to be revealed. The days after the hospital incident were some of the longest I had ever endured. Every morning, I woke hoping for a message, a sign, anything that would tell me I was still part of my grandson's life. But the silence was deafening. My calls went unanswered, my messages ignored, and the cold weight of rejection pressed down harder with each passing day. Then, one evening, a neighbor who had always been close to the family dropped a subtle hint. I heard some things that might explain why your son has been distant, she said cautiously, her eyes flicking nervously toward the street. My heart raced. I leaned closer, desperate for even the smallest clue. She didn't speak the full truth, but what she said planted the first seeds of doubt and suspicion. The next morning, I decided to confront the subtle signs I had ignored for months. There were whispers, the hurried phone calls my son and daughter-in-law made when I walked into a room, the hushed conversations that ended when I appeared. I remembered the way my daughter-in-law's smile sometimes faltered, the way she glanced at my son with attention I had never noticed before. Slowly, a terrible realization began to take shape. This wasn't just avoidance. This was deliberate. This was betrayal. My son, the boy I had raised with love and care, had chosen to keep me away. The reasons, however, were still hidden, locked behind walls of secrecy and half-truths. I remembered the time he laughed off my concerns about certain decisions, brushing them aside as irrelevant. Now, the laughter felt cruel, a warning I had been too trusting to recognize. And then came the discovery that shattered what little calm I had left. While looking through old messages and trying to piece together the puzzle, I stumbled upon a conversation my son and daughter-in-law had thought I would never see. The words were cold, calculated, and shocking. They weren't just avoiding me, they were actively plotting to keep me away, to control the family narrative, to ensure I had no say, no influence, no access. A mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief surged through me. How could someone I had devoted my life to betray me so completely? How could they manipulate the very blood that connected us to erase me from this most important moment in our family's life? The weight of years of love and sacrifice seemed meaningless in the face of such calculated cruelty. The betrayal didn't stop there. I realized they had also been carefully rewriting memories, creating a story in which I was the one who was difficult or overbearing. Every innocent concern I had voiced had been twisted into evidence against me, fueling their justification for keeping me away. The realization left me reeling. I had loved blindly, trusted completely, and now, I was left questioning everything I had believed about my own family. But even in the midst of despair, a spark of determination lit within me. I would not allow their lies to stand unchallenged. I would uncover every secret, expose every manipulation, and reclaim my place in my grandson's life. I would not be silenced. I would not be erased. The days that followed were filled with careful observation. I watched my son and daughter-in-law's interactions, piecing together small inconsistencies, noting patterns, and quietly gathering evidence of the deception. The truth was out there, hidden beneath layers of false smiles and carefully chosen words. But I was determined to find it, and in the quiet moments of reflection, I realized something powerful. Betrayal may hurt, but it also awakens a resilience I never knew I had. My love for my grandson, my desire for justice, and the decades of strength I had cultivated would guide me through the storm that lay ahead. It took a week of careful observation and quiet investigation before I finally discovered the truth. I had long suspected that something deeper was at play, and now, the pieces fell into place in a way that made my heart sink and rage ignite all at once. The shocking secret was simple yet devastating. My son and daughter-in-law had been planning to control every aspect of the family inheritance and the future of the household, and my presence was seen as an obstacle. The baby, my beloved grandson, had become a pawn in a carefully orchestrated scheme. They whispered about property, finances, and decisions I had every right to influence. As if my existence no longer mattered, I remembered the quiet conversations I had overheard, the ones I had dismissed at first. Their tone was casual, almost casual cruelty, as if they believed I would never uncover it. They spoke of keeping the grandmother busy or distracted, ensuring she wouldn't interfere with their plans. My blood ran cold. The realization of how calculated their betrayal had been struck me harder than any harsh word or slammed door ever could. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were quickly replaced by a steely determination. I had been blindsided, yes, but no more. I could feel the years of love and patience converging with anger and clarity. I would not allow manipulation and deceit to define my relationship with my family. I refused to let greed dictate who could and could not be part of my grandson's life. I remembered the small signs I had ignored, the extra locks, the sudden phone calls that ended when I picked up, the tension in the room whenever I asked about the baby. All of it made sense now. They had been careful, methodical, and relentless, but their plan had one weakness: my determination to fight for truth and justice. The days that followed were tense. I began to document everything, noting inconsistencies, collecting evidence, and preparing myself for a confrontation that I knew would be unavoidable. Every whispered word, every secretive glance I observed, fueled my resolve. I would expose the lies, I would reclaim my place. And I would ensure my grandson knew the love that had always been there for him. As I pieced together their scheme, I also reflected on the emotions I had experienced over the past week's: shock, grief, disbelief, and finally clarity. It was a painful awakening, but one that strengthened my resolve. I realized that love without boundaries could be exploited, but love fortified with determination could never be defeated. When I finally confronted my son later that week, I did so not out of blind anger, but with the calm and focused strength that only comes from knowing the full truth. The look on his face as I spoke, the tension in his shoulders, the flicker of guilt in his eyes, it confirmed that I had seen clearly what had been hidden from me. The betrayal was undeniable. And yet, I knew that acknowledging the truth was only the first step. I also realized that this revelation changed everything. No longer could I approach my family with blind trust or unquestioning patience. Now I had clarity, purpose, and a plan. Every action, every word, every interaction from this point forward would be guided by the knowledge of their intentions and the fierce love I carried for my grandson. The day of confrontation arrived with a tension that made my chest feel as if it were being squeezed. I knew I could no longer remain silent, watching from the sidelines as lies and manipulation threatened the bond I had fought my entire life to build. I arrived at their home, heart pounding, holding not just evidence, but years of love, sacrifice, and a determination that could not be ignored. My son opened the door, his expression a mixture of surprise and guarded defensiveness. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. I stepped forward, my eyes unwavering. "I'm here because it's time you hear the truth. No more whispers, no more lies, no more keeping me away from my grandson." He tried to brush me off, his words rehearsed and defensive. "I'm just trying to protect everyone, Mom. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted, my voice steady despite the flood of emotions inside me. "I understand the lies. I understand the manipulation. I understand that you've been keeping me away because you think I'm a threat. But I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to reclaim what is mine by right, by love, and by truth." The daughter-in-law appeared behind him, her face pale but defiant. "This is ridiculous," she said sharply. "You're overreacting. We're just trying to manage things." I took a deep breath and laid out the evidence I had gathered over the past week. Messages, overheard conversations, and small details they had thought I would never notice. Each point hit its mark, and I watched as the mask of casual confidence began to slip from their faces. They realized, with growing dread, that their careful planning had been exposed. "You think keeping me away will erase my love for this family? That it will erase the bond with my grandson?" I asked, my voice rising yet controlled. "You were wrong. You've underestimated what love and truth can do." My son's face twisted with conflicting emotions: guilt, fear, and frustration battling within him. "Mom, it's not like that. We didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" I demanded. "Exclude me, lie to me, keep me from my grandson. You made decisions that hurt me, that betrayed trust I gave you without question. And now it ends. This family, this child, and my love for him cannot be controlled by fear or greed." The room went silent. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. I could see the cracks in their defenses, the flickers of conscience that their secrecy could no longer hide. I felt a surge of power, not from revenge but from clarity. I was no longer a passive observer. I was here to take my rightful place, not just as a grandmother, but as a voice of truth and love that could not be silenced. Then came the moment that sealed the confrontation. I spoke directly to my grandson, even though he was only a newborn, in a way that felt almost sacred. "I will always be here for you," I said softly, tears glistening in my eyes. "No one can take that away." My son's shoulders slumped, and the daughter-in-law's eyes softened. For the first time, the walls of deception seemed to crack, revealing a moment of understanding and acknowledgement of the truth. It was not a moment of complete resolution. Anger, hurt, and tension still lingered, but the balance had shifted. I had confronted betrayal head-on. I had spoken truth, reclaimed my voice, and planted the seed that the lies and manipulation could no longer hold the same power over our family. The days following the confrontation were tense but transformative. My son and daughter-in-law avoided me at first, their guilt and discomfort evident in every glance and gesture. Yet, the silence no longer intimidated me. I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and, most importantly, my place in my grandson's life. I began visiting more often, slowly, carefully, ensuring that my presence was unwavering but respectful. At first, they tested boundaries, questioning every move, but I remained calm, firm, and loving. The baby responded to me instinctively, recognizing the warmth, care, and constancy I offered. Every coo, every tiny hand clutched around my finger, reaffirmed my determination and my rightful bond with him. The emotional wounds were not immediately healed. The betrayal, the lies, and the secrecy had left scars, but they also exposed what was truly important: truth, love, and boundaries. I realized that no one could take away my power unless I allowed it. My strength came not from retaliation, but from clarity and self-respect. In time, the family began to adjust. My son, though still guarded, started to see the value of my presence not as a threat, but as a guiding and loving influence in the child's life. The daughter-in-law, though initially resistant, could no longer deny the bond I had established. Quietly, the atmosphere began to shift, subtle but undeniable. I also took practical steps to ensure the future was secure. Important family decisions, inheritance matters, and household responsibilities were clarified. I made sure my voice was heard, my rights respected, and my presence acknowledged, not with confrontation, but with calm, unwavering assertion. The power of preparation, truth, and emotional intelligence had turned what once felt like helplessness into control and empowerment. Through this journey, I discovered something more profound than I had imagined. Love, even when betrayed, has a resilience that fear, greed, or deception cannot destroy. I had fought not for revenge but for connection, truth, and justice. And in doing so, I found an inner strength I hadn't fully recognized until tested. Finally, as I held my grandson in my arms, feeling his soft breaths and tiny heartbeat against my chest, I knew that the struggles, the pain, and the betrayals had led to this moment of triumph. The bond I had dreamed of was no longer just hope, it was real, tangible, and unbreakable. I looked at my son, seeing a mixture of remorse, recognition, and understanding. While the past could not be erased, the future was still ours to shape. I had reclaimed my place, not through anger, but through perseverance, love, and unwavering belief in what was right. As the sun set on that day, I felt a profound sense of peace and empowerment. Life had tested me, and though it had wounded me, it had also strengthened me. I had fought for my family, for truth, and for my grandson, and I had won not through confrontation alone, but through the quiet, steady force of a heart that refuses to give up on love.